Hi y'all, it's Crystal from Crystal Design. Today I am working up the Sunset Sweater in WeCrochet's Brava stripe in the shade Twilight. This yarn is a number 4 medium worsted weight yarn. Each skein carries 218 yards. For size extra small, you'll need 6 skeins, 7 for small, 8 medium, 9 for large and extra large, 10 for 2 and 3X, 11 for 4X, and 12 skeins for 5X. This is a very fitted, snug sweater, so if you think you would like to size up for a looser fit or lengthen it, be sure to order an extra skein or 2. Other things that you'll need are your stitch markers, yarn needle, measuring tape, and scissors. Okay, now we are going to do our gauge swatch. Our gauge swatch is going to ensure that your tension is the same as the patterns and that your garment comes out the correct size. You have to gauge swatch carefully when crocheting fitted wearable items, or you risk your garment not fitting. For this gauge swatch, we are going to chain 18, or an even number. And in the second chain from your hook, you're going to place a single crochet. Where we go into the same stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, go into the next chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, and go into the following chain, yarn over and pull up a loop. You'll have 4 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 4 loops on your hook, chain 1. Now we're going to repeat that across, always starting in the same spot that we just finished. Single crochet 3 together. You should have 2 chains left at the end of the row. Go back into the same stitch and work your single crochet 3 together as you have been. But here you're going to stop and not chain 1, but you're going to work a single crochet into that last chain spot with the ending of your stitch. Now the good news is that this stitch pattern is just a simple 1 row repeat. We'll chain 1, which doesn't count as a stitch, and single crochet in that same stitch where we are, and begin our single crochet 3 together in the same stitch, chain 1. Keep repeating this across to the end of the row. Okay, we should have 2 stitches left here. Starting in the same stitch where we just finished, we'll do our last single crochet 3 together of the row. Instead of chaining 1, we're placing a single crochet back into that same stitch there that we ended with. Then you'll turn and keep repeating the 1 row repeat. Okay, so once you have reached at least 4 inches, you want to aim for probably closer to 6. You'll have a nice swatch where you can measure your gauge and make sure that your tension is on point. I think you'll need to chain 1 loosely as you are doing a single crochet 3 together and chain 1 combination throughout. those chain ones, for me at least, tend to get pretty tight. So make sure you loosen up. This is a garment, so we want it to have some drape. And then you can block your swatch. I steam block mine. Just be sure to follow the care instructions for your yarn. Then you can measure your gauge and make sure that you have 13 stitches in 4 inches and 10.5 rows in 4 inches. Each Trinity stitch counts as 2 stitches here. If you do not meet gauge, then you'll need to change your hook size and re-swatch. I'll link up a video on meeting gauge for you in the description. Once you have been able to meet gauge, then you're ready to start making your sweater. Okay, for the extra small size, you are going to foundation double crochet 49. For small, 55, medium 63, large 69, extra large 75, 2X 83, 3X 87, 4X 95, and 5X 101. So for our foundation double crochet, we start with a slip knot on our hook and then make 2 chains. To foundation double crochet, we're going to yarn over and insert our hook into the very first chain we made. Yarn over and pull up a loop. You'll have 3 loops on your hook. Holding on to that same chain, we're going to yarn over and pull through 1, and then finish our double crochet normally. Right there, that chain spot, I'm going to hold on to that. To finish my double crochet, yarn over it and pull through 2 times. Where I'm holding is where I will insert my hook to make the next foundation stitch. Yarn over, insert my hook there. Yarn over, pull up a loop. Yarn over, pull through 1. Complete a double crochet like normal. I'll keep repeating that until I have the correct number of foundation stitches for my back panel size. When I'm ready, I will meet you back here and we will start on the next row. Okay, once you have your foundation stitches made, double check your stitch count, turn, and for row 2 we're going to start with a chain 3 or alternative, which is what I'm going to do here. Then we're going to front post double crochet in the first stitch. That's really the second stitch, but the first stitch of our repeat. Then we're going to back post double crochet in the next. So we have our chain 3, front post, back post. Now we're going to repeat the front and back post across. Front post in the next, back post in the following, and just keep repeating that until we have 2 stitches left, and then I will meet you back here. Okay, we're at the end of row 2 here. We have 2 stitches left, so we just did a back post double crochet. We're going to front post double crochet in the next one. And then we have 1 stitch left. Remember, these skip chains for our foundation are not counting as a stitch there. So we only have 1 left. And for this one, we are going to end with a regular double crochet in there. And then we're going to turn our work. Our stitch count is still the same. We haven't done any changes there. All right, for row 3, we are going to continue our post stitch ribbing. So we'll start with our chain 3 or alternative, and then we're going to do a back post first, and then a front post next. And that's our repeat across. Back post double crochet, front post double crochet. Keep repeating that until the last 2 stitches, and then I'll meet you back here. Okay, when you get to the end and there are 2 stitches left, it's time to do one more back post double crochet, and then we're going to double crochet in the last stitch, which is the top of the third chain if you're doing a regular chain 3 there. Okay, so row 4, this will be our right side. We're going to chain 1. Does not count as a stitch here. We're going to start in the same stitch, and we're doing a single crochet 3 together. So we'll insert our hook in the first stitch, the same one where we have our chain 1. Yarn over and pull up a loop. 2 loops on our hook. Insert our hook in the next stitch. Yarn over, pull up a loop. 3 loops on our hook. Insert our hook in the third stitch. Yarn over, pull up a loop. 4 loops on our hook. Yarn over and pull through all 4. Chain 1. Now, to start the next part, we are going to start in the same spot as the last leg of our single crochet 3 together. So we start here, go into the same stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, go into the next, yarn over, pull up a loop, go into a third, yarn over, pull up a loop, 4 loops, yarn over, pull through all 4, chain 1. So now we are going to continue repeating that across, remembering to insert our hook into the same stitch that we just finished. Okay, keep repeating that. When we get to the end, we are not going to do a chain 1 after our last single crochet 3 together. That's only on the end stitch. So I'm going to keep repeating this across, and I'll meet you back here at the end of the row. Okay, we're at the end of row 4, and I have 2 stitches left, so I need to do another single crochet 3 together. This will be the last one of the row. So I'm inserting the same stitch I finished in, go to the second, and go to the last stitch, yarn over and pull through all of those to complete my single crochet 3 together. Now I'm not going to chain 1 here. Instead, I'm going to insert my hook back into the last stitch and make a single crochet, and that will be the last stitch of the row. Then turn. Now the good news is that this panel is a 1 row repeat from here. So we're going to keep repeating row 4 from here on out. So you'll start with the chain 1. You'll start in the same stitch as we just did. We're going to make a single crochet. Then we're going to start in that same stitch and do a single crochet 3 together. And here I'm working into the single crochet 3 stitches and the chain 1s. You can see each stitch there on the top. There's my single crochet 3 together, chain 1, start in the same stitch I just finished, go into the next and the following, yarn over, pull through, chain 1, and just continue in that way. And remember at the end not to add the chain 1, but to do the single crochet in the last stitch. So now we are going to continue repeating this row 4 repeat until your back panel is as tall as you need, which is at least, or for most sizes, 24 inches. Most of this will depend on your height. So picture just 24 inches. You can work more or less. You can also check your target width measurement after you've worked up a few of these. So for extra small, you want your width to be at least 15 inches, 16.75 for small, 9.5 for medium, 21.25 for large, 23 extra large, 25.5 for 2X, 27.5 for 3X, 29.25 for 4x and 31 inches wide for 5x. Now, if your panel is coming out wider, that means your sweater overall is going to be bigger. If it's coming out narrower, it's going to be smaller. So you'll want to make sure that you can get close to that target width. You might have to change your hook and start over. Otherwise, your sweater is possibly not going to fit, depending on how much wider or narrower it is. Okay, again, we're at the end here of our row. We have 2 stitches left. We're going to start in the one we just finished to make our last single crochet 3 together, and then single crochet back into the same stitch at the end, the same last stitch that you just finished in. Okay, so we're going to turn and we're going to repeat that one row until your back panel reaches 24 inches tall or to your desired height. Once your back panel is complete, you'll start your front panel the same way with the same foundation double crochet stitches and following the same stitch pattern. Work until your front panel is about 15.5 inches long. Then we'll add the last 22 rows, which covers the last 8.5 inches of the shoulders. If you lengthened your back panel or made any changes, this is where you'd make those adjustments now before starting the shoulders. All right, so first we're going to set up our shoulders. Here is where I'm going to start working and crochet across. So I'm going to work on my first shoulder, skip some stitches, and then join and work on my second shoulder. So for extra small, you're going to count over 17 stitches, and we're counting across the top here. So 17 for extra small, 21 for small, 25 for medium, 27 large, 31 extra large, 35 2x, 37 3x, 41 4x, and 43 stitches for 5x. Place your first stitch marker. This will be your first shoulder. Now you're going to skip the next set of stitches. Extra small will skip 15, small and medium will skip 13, large will skip 15, extra large 2x, 3x, and 4x will skip 13, and 5x will skip 15. And then we're going to place our next stitch marker in the following stitch. Okay, so from here to here, second shoulder, here to here, our first shoulder. We are going to continue working in our Trinity Stitch pattern. So just our one row repeat. So I'll chain 1, single crochet in the same stitch, insert my hook back into that same spot, start my single crochet 3 together, close it, and chain 1. And just keep repeating that until I get to my stitch marker, my first one, in which I will end my last stitch of this shoulder and be able to remove the stitch marker. Okay, just like normal, I have 2 stitches left in my row because our last stitch is going to go where the stitch marker is. So I'll go ahead and remove that, and then I will do my last single crochet 3 together. And as normal, I won't chain 1 here. I'll just single crochet back into that same spot where I ended my stitch. And my stitch count is correct, equal to the number of stitches we counted over. My stitch pattern is going the same way. Okay, so it's important when you start your next shoulder that you start here on this side, the right side, which I've marked, going the same way, otherwise your stitch pattern will be off. So mark the front of your work, and that way you know when you join your yarn here, which side to join it and work on. Okay, so from here, we're going to stop and turn our work and just continue our one row repeat for the height of our shoulder, which is 8.5 inches or 22 rows for all sizes. And once I have reached that height, then I can cut my yarn, leave a long tail so that I can seam the shoulders together in the end, and then I will join and start on my next shoulder. Okay, so go ahead and finish your shoulder off camera, and I will meet you to start the second shoulder when I am done with mine. Okay, once you have reached the height for your shoulder piece there, you can cut your yarn and leave a long tail for seaming. And then it's time to rejoin. We're going to skip the middle stitches. Make sure that you're on the right side, the same side you started going this way, to join, not on the opposite side, because then you'll have your stitch pattern off. I'm going to join in the stitch where my purple stitch marker is, here, and I will start my stitch pattern. So I'll do my single crochet, going back into the same stitch, do my single crochet 3 together, chain 1 across. We get to the end of the row there, we're going to turn and work back, again working in pattern with our 1 row repeat. And we'll just keep repeating this row for the height of our second shoulder. If you get to the end of your shoulder, you'll have 2 stitches left. This is this stitch and this stitch. Starting in the same stitch, work our last single crochet 3 together, single crochet back into the last stitch. We'll just turn and keep repeating for this same height as our other shoulder. Okay, so now we're going to make our sleeves, and we will start those the same way we have started the front and back panels, with our 3 rows of ribbing. The first row, you're going to foundation double crochet 25 for sizes extra small, small, and medium, or 29 for the rest of the sizes. And you're going to work front post, back post, alternating stitch for 2 rows, just like we did for the front and back panels. Then we will work our 1 row repeat in Trinity Stitch for the full length of the sleeve, and every so often we are going to increase, and how often depends on the size you're working. For extra small and small, you're going to work 7 rows of Trinity Stitch and then work a row of increase, which I'll show you in a moment how to do. For medium and large, you're going to work 5 rows of Trinity Stitch and then do an increase row. For the rest of the sizes, you're going to work 3 rows of Trinity Stitch and then do your increase row. So this is my almost finished sleeve here. I've finished the increase. Once you get to your widest width that you need for your upper arm area, for your armhole, then you'll just work your 1 row repeat for Trinity Stitch to finish the length of your sleeve out. But here I have started my sleeve. I've worked my 3 rows for my ribbing, and I've started my 1 row repeat of the Trinity Stitch for the size I'm making, and now it's time to do the increase row. So the increase row will be on the right side, and you're going to chain 1 like we have been, does not count. We'll single crochet in that same stitch, and here's where we're going to increase. To increase, we're going to chain 2. Those will count as stitches, 1, 2 more stitches, and we're going to work in them when we come back around. So just like the other chains, make sure you do them loosely enough so that you can work into them. Now we're going to do our stitch pattern. Single crochet 3 together, starting in the same stitch and going into the next and the following. We have our 4 loops, yarn over and pull through, chain 1 like normal. So at this point, I like to take a minute to straighten up my chains because they get pulled funny when you don't work into them. There we go. So that I can see them. So there's my single, chain 1, chain 2, and then here are the 2 from doing the single crochet 3 together in our chain 1. So I'm going to take a moment to mark the front of that first single crochet I made so I know that I've increased here 2 stitches. Now I'm just going to repeat across the regular stitch pattern with my single crochet 3 together, chain 1, always starting in the same stitch I ended with, until the very end. And then we're going to increase again on the opposite side in the same way. Okay, we have our 2 stitches at the end left. I have just done my chain 1 to finish that part. So now I'm going to do my last single crochet 3 of the row. Here on a regular row is where I would normally not do the chain 1 and put the single crochet to finish. Since we're increasing on this row, we're going to do another chain 2 loosely so that we can work into them, and then finish the row with the single crochet back in the same stitch. Again, take a minute to straighten those up. You can mark this or not. I just marked one end so that I could easily count. Okay, so after your increase row, you're going to turn and work more repeats of your regular stitch pattern row. So I'm going to show you how to do that since we have the chain 1s, and I'm going to tell you the amount of repeats by size. Okay, so to work after the stitch pattern is the same, chain 1, which doesn't count, work our first single crochet in that first stitch, and then start our single crochet 3 together, which will be in the stitch we just worked in, and then those 2 chains we added. So we go in and do the first yarn over and pull up a loop, go into the first chain here, and then go into the next chain, have your 4 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through, chain 1. Then we continue working the regular stitch pattern across, starting in the same stitch we finished, single crochet 3 together, chain 1. And when we get to the end, we'll do the same thing, working our final stitch into those 2 chains we added in the last single crochet. Okay, this is where it gets tricky at the end here because of the way those chains like to come apart on you. So I've got another single crochet 3 together, and I'm going to go into one of those chains that I added here, and it's all kinds of pulled funny. There we go, 4 loops on our hook, and we still have 2 stitches left, our second chain we added and our single crochet. So we're going to be adding one more single crochet 3 together, starting in that chain we just went in, going into the following, and then the last single crochet. Now here we're working a regular row, so we're just going to put a single crochet back in that last stitch without adding the chain 1. Now as you saw, I was going under the 2 loops of the chains. If it's too tight, like I was having trouble there, you can go underneath the chain space or just 1 loop. You just need to make sure that you're working into both of those there so that you get the correct stitch count and your stitch pattern stays the same as you're increasing your sleeve. Okay, so that's how you do the increase row for the sleeves, and the increase repetitions for each of the different sizes. For extra small, you're going to repeat that increase row every 8 rows 4 more times. For small, repeat the increase row every 8th row 4 more times. Medium, repeat the increase row every 6 rows 3 more times. And then you're going to repeat the increase row every 8 rows, only 2 more times. Large will also do the same. Repeat the increase row every 6 rows, 3 more times. Then repeat the increase row 8 rows, 2 more times. Extra large, repeat the increase row every 6 rows, 6 more times. 2x, repeat the increase row every 4 rows, 3 more times. Then every 6 rows, 4 more times. 3x is the same. Repeat the increase row every 4 rows, 3 more times. Then every 6 rows, 4 more times. 4x, repeat the increase row every 4 rows, 6 more times. Then every 6 rows, 2 more times. 5x, repeat the increase row every 4 rows, 9 more times. Your final stitch count for 5x is 69, 4x 65, 2 and 3x 61, extra large 57, large 53, medium 49, small 45, and extra small 45. The recommended length for your sleeves is 20 inches, so once you have finished your increases, you are going to continue repeating the 1 row repeat for your Trinity stitch until your sleeve measures at least 20 inches. You can modify that, of course, for your specific arms. If you need to lengthen it or shorten it, then you just add more or less rows. Okay, once you have made 2 sleeves, your front and back panels, it's time to block your pieces before we seam them together. I steam block mine here, but you can also wet block. Just be sure to follow the care instructions on your yarn label. Okay, once we've blocked both of our panels, then we're going to place them together to sew the shoulders up top. Okay, you want to work on the wrong side, so here we've marked the right side of our front panel, so we're going to flip that over. The back panel is going to be right side up, and the front panel is right side down, so that when we sew it together, turn inside out, this is the right side, wrong side, wrong side. And we're just going to seam using a mattress stitch across the top here, matching up stitch for stitch for your shoulders. I'll start with this light blue color. It'll be easier for you to see what I am doing. Going into these dark blue stitches, just going to go under the stitch, the same spot you would for your crochet hook. And you're going to go under the next stitch and find the corresponding stitch across. And just continue like so. I'm going to drop that because it's too small. And I will make sure I am matched up stitch for stitch and use this tail to sew back across. Let me zoom in a little closer here for you so you can see how I'm going under the stitches. So I'm matching them up, and since they are facing opposite directions, their V's of the top of the stitches are going to be opposite as well. Okay, so now I'm just going to sew back in the same way, back across from the inside of the top to the outside edge of the shoulder. Okay, and once you finish one shoulder, then it's time to thread your yarn needle and do it again on the opposite shoulder in the same manner. Now both our shoulders are seamed together. So I'm going to flip it to the right side. You can see we have a nice strong seam there for the shoulders. Okay, to seam our sleeves, we're going to fold them in half and sew down the long side. You can use a length of yarn, or you can leave a long tail when you finish. And we're just going to use the mattress stitch just like we did on the shoulders, sewing into those edge stitches all the way down. Okay, now we're going to seam the sides of our body from the bottom up. We're going to leave the upper arm area unseamed so that we can sew our sleeve on. So it should be about equal to the width of your sleeve at the widest point. For each size, that's slightly different. So you're going to seam from the bottom up, leaving 6.75 inches open for extra small and small, 7.5 inches for medium, 8.25 for large, 8.75 for extra large, 9.5 for 2 and 3X, 10 for 4X, and 10.5 inches for 5X. So we'll seam from the bottom up again in the same way with a length of yarn and using the mattress stitch. Okay, to seam our sleeves to the armholes that we left, we're going to turn our sleeve so that it's right side out, and we're going to keep the body of our sweater with the panels wrong side out. So the sleeve is right side out and the sweater is wrong side. Then I'm going to fit the sleeve inside the body of the sweater so that the wide end, the upper arm end, matches up with the armhole. So once I have the ends fitted together there, you just want to make sure the seam of your sleeve is down at the bottom of the armhole. You should be able to fit the end of the sleeve and the armhole opening together easily. A little bit of stretch is okay, but too much and you'll have your sweater warped. Then we'll just continue with our sewing method, but we're sewing around now, using the same technique. Just matching up, you're going to be sewing into the side of the rows on the body of the sweater and into the top of the stitches on the sleeve. One way to make sure that your sleeve and your armhole match up is to lock them together with a stitch marker at the top and the bottom. This can help you keep them matched up, matching up the stitches by row so you don't miss any. Once you get one sleeve sewn on, then you're going to repeat on the other side for the other sleeve. Okay, we are almost finished. Now we are just going to add our cowl neck to our neckline here. And for this one, we're going to be working the round. So we're going to join back here and go around, join that round together, and then keep going around. Our stitch multiple for the neckline is 2, so it's important that we have an even number to get our ribbing rows to work. We'll start each round with a chain 2, which won't count as a stitch. But when we do a chain 3, it does count as a double crochet. So the cowl neck is 12 inches long as written. You can shorten it to make more of like a turtleneck, or you can lengthen it if you prefer as well. If you want a looser fitting cowl neck, which you can see our neckline is very deep to help make sure it's not choking us too much, you can add even more stitches than the pattern calls for to make it really fold out and away from the neckline some. So for the last couple rounds of the cowl neck, I went up a hook size from a 6mm to 7mm to loosen it up so it can kind of lay flat. And you can also just loosen your tension with the 6mm. And since we're working the round, you might want to tuck your sleeves into the body to trap them so they're not flopping around as you get going here back and forth. So we're on the right side of our sweater. We're going to join at the back of the neck. So usually when I have seams, I like to join either right before or right after, and that way I am not adding yet another seam in the center. But I don't like to join too close, adding bulk or questionable spots if I join accidentally on the sewing that we did there. So either I can join like right here or after, which is into the side of rows in the dark yarn, so I won't do that. So right before my left shoulder seam, I'm on my left right now. When I wear it, it'll be my left. I'm going to join. And I'm actually, instead of doing a slip stitch and then a chain 3, I'm going to do my chain 3 alternative. So I'm using that loop on my hook as part of my chain 3 alternative there. Go back under that front leg. Okay, if you didn't quite get that, you can just do a chain 3, slip stitch here and chain 3. Now we're going to double crochet around, and if you remember, we skipped either 13 or 15 stitches in the center of our neck between our two shoulders, and then in the back we'll have a similar count, although it's a bit looser stitch. So we're going to have some, let's just say for simplicity's sake, we'll have 15 stitches here and 15 stitches there. That's 30. And for the extra small, small, and medium, we are going to add 70 stitches around total. So then you would put 20 stitches here and 20 stitches here. For large through 5X, we're going to add 80 stitches. So if we take out 30, then we have 50. We're going to put 25 and 25. And if you did the 13, then you would adjust that by the 2 stitches twice. So just gives you some idea of how to distribute the stitches as we work around. The actual stitch count is not terribly important, just keeping it an even number is important, and making sure, like anytime you add a border or anything, that you're putting enough to keep it straight. If anything, I would add extra so that it is kind of wavy and bows out, because we're going to do a ribbing stitch, which is automatically going to pull it in. So you don't want it to be real tight to start, and then the ribbing pulls it in even more. Okay, so we've joined. We started with our chain 3 alternative, or chain 3, which counts as our first stitch. And now we're working to the side of the rows. For simplicity's sake, I'm just going to go around these because I know I have this dark yarn here. Usually I like to go into the side of the rows under 2, but you're just not going to be able to see that here. Okay, so when we get here, if you'll notice, this is the end of my row and this is the top of the row below it, the stitch. So I'm not going to go in this space here because it's going to really stretch that out. I'm just going to ignore it and go into the next stitch there. If you feel like it's pulling too much, then you can go ahead and put a stitch here. So it's more of a smooth transition there. And now you're just working to the top of each stitch, so that part's super simple. Just have to work on that transition there, which looks a lot better that way. Okay, here we have our other transition there. So if I go into the side of this row, probably we'll have a little gap there. Not too bad, but we can add it. And make it smoother there. So usually when I'm about halfway, when I'm going around like this, I'll go ahead and stop and count and make sure I'm similar to my halfway stitch count if it matters. Again, it doesn't matter a lot on this particular neckline. We just want it to look even and lay flat and not be gapping too much or pulling in too tight. So if we're adding more stitches, it's fine, long as we get an even stitch count in the end, which is really only a matter of adding one more or one less. So here I'm only seeing one strand, so I'm going to go a little bit deeper. I don't like putting so much tension on just one. All right. And as we turn back here, we're going to work into the back neck where we just have the top of our stitches, so real simple to work into. Okay, I have 2 stitches left to work into. I'm going to double check my stitch count and make sure I have an even number. If I don't, I'm going to place 2 stitches in one of those to make it even. 70. Okay, I've got 70 stitches. Nice even number. Going to slip stitch to the top of my chain 3 alternative or the 3rd chain. And now we're going to continue around going in the same direction. For round 2, we're going to start with a chain 2. This does not count as our first stitch. Instead, this front post double crochet we're about to make does, and we're going to do it around this first chain 3 or alternative. And that is our first stitch of the round, not the chain 2. So I'm going to mark that. On the next stitch, we are going to back post double crochet. And then we're going to alternate front, back. Keep repeating those all the way around, and then we'll join with a slip stitch when we get back around. Okay, we're here at the end of the round. Just did a front post stitch. I have my last stitch left here. Working a back post double crochet in that one. And then I'm going to join to the top of my first post stitch, not the chain 2. So where I put the stitch marker with the slip stitch. And then for round 3, I'm going to chain 2 again, which doesn't count, and I'm going to front post around the first front post double crochet, and that counts as my first stitch. Now I will back post double crochet in the back post and front post in the front post stitches. And keep repeating that around. And now we have just a 1 row repeat, 1 round repeat. So we'll keep repeating this round for 30 rows or until the neck is 12 inches. So it's tall enough to fold over. Again, when I got to the last 2 rows, I size up my hook to give those last 2 rows a little bit looser gauge so that they can lay flat when you fold it down onto the chest and shoulders area. And the more rounds we put into it, the less blocky and rectangle this will be, and the more rounded it will. And of course, when you wear it, your body is not square, so it will softly pull since our yarn is stretchy. Okay, here we are at the end of round 3. I'm in the lighter yarn, so I just wanted to show you quickly in case you need to see better, since this dark yarn is impossible to see on camera. We've done a front post. Now we're doing our last back post, double crochet of the round. And then we're going to join to the top of our first front post, double crochet. So we're not counting those chain 2s with a slip stitch, and then we're ready to start. Chain 2 does not count as a stitch. Now we're going to go around our first front post double crochet with a front post double crochet, and that counts as our first stitch of the round. Okay, so if you're not careful, those chain 2s can look like their own separate stitch, so I highly recommend the stitch marker there if you have trouble with that. Next, back post double crochet around the next stitch, and then just alternate front post around the front post, oops, back post around the back post, double crochets. And after your last round on the cowl neck, you just slip stitch that last stitch and cut your yarn, pull it through the last stitch and weave in your ends.